Okay, so welcome to Shaar Yichud Emunah. And it's not a huge part of Tanya. It's actually, I believe, just 12 chapters long. So our commitment to learning through Shaar Yichud Emunah, we almost there. We're in chapter 10 today out of 12. So just to talk a little bit outside of the text about what today's class is going to be about. The name of the Sefer is the gate of Yichud, which is a unity and faith, Emunah, that we believe that everything, that God is a unity. So in chapter 8, we spoke about the fact that in relation to our behavior, things start with a thought, and it goes from the thought, the chokhmah, the bina, the da'at, then it kind of proceeds through all our emotions, and then things manifest into thought, a different kind of thought, not the thought of the initial chokhmah, but once we receive the chokhmah and the ideas, chokhmah bina da'at, then it processes through, and then it manifests in a resulting thought, speech, or action. And we spoke about it in chapter 8, saying that when we think about our own behavior, our own actions, our own thoughts, our thoughts, our speech, and our action, we really need to understand from where things root. They root back through our emotions to initially original point of like a spark of new information, a spark, an idea, a wisdom that then filtrates through us and manifests in thought, speech, and action of our behavior. But then we said, when we think about Hashem, who's the creator of the world, and we know that everything kind of starts with him, and everything starts with his wisdom, that Bereshit, Bereshis, Bara Elokim, with Reshit, he created everything. And Reshit can mean the first, the beginning, but it can also mean Chokhmah, that Hashem created everything really from his Chokhmah. But we don't really understand. How can we really understand Hashem and then all of these different aspects of him and these different Middot, these different aspects of him? How do we understand that in relation to the fact that all of his aspects, all of his personas, all of his different, even if we use the word spheres, all of the different ways in which he manifests in the world, how can we really understand that in connection with the fact that he's really a oneness? So just to say that in one other way, when we say, and a lot of Shaar Yichud Emunah is an attempt to explain the beginning of Shema, that we say, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. And then what is that oneness? What kind of oneness are we talking about? And we're saying that Hashem has a oneness, two kinds of oneness. And then, of course, there's Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto Leolam Va'ed. But what is this oneness we're talking about? So on the one hand, we're saying only God is the creator of the universe. Only God. There's no other power other than God creating the universe. God is the one and only. You can imagine in a relationship, you my one and only. I have no other people in my life that are anything as amazing as you. You my one and only. So Hashem is one and unique. Is the only power in the universe. That's one aspect of what we mean when we say Shema. And the other aspect of what we mean when we say Shema is that, and this is the Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto Leolam Va'ed, this is the lower kind of unity, is that God and the world are truly one. It's not just that God is the only creator, that's Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, but Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto Leolam Va'ed means God and the creation and the world are truly one. So there's Ilah, there's Yichud Ilah, the higher unity. That's God, you're my one and only. You are the only power that has any relevance in the world. And the lower, Yichud Tata, the lower unity is God and all of the created world are united in such a intimate uniting that you can't really say God is absent from any part of creation. He is so enmeshed and infused in the creation. He and the creation are one. But then we spent a lot of time saying, but we don't see him. He has to hide. He hides in nature. He hides behind the name Elohim. He hides as Teva, which is nature. But that's all Hashem hiding in creation. But I won't say all of the Tanya again, but essentially Hashem is hiding in the created world. But for what we need to know is that the world and Hashem are really a oneness, which is amazing because it means we and Hashem are part of that oneness. And everything that we encounter and every person we encounter is part of that oneness because there is nothing else but God, Ein Od Milvado. So that's what we were saying before. And then in chapter 9, we were saying, so in chapter 9, we were saying, so even though we can understand our process and how our behavior kind of roots back to our initial thinking and understanding or the way we think about things, when it comes to Hashem, a lot of it is incomprehensible. And it's funny because the Tanya went through many chapters trying to explain it, and then it comes down to it and it says, you can't really understand how Hashem and all of his parts are part of a oneness. This is part of the secrets of Kabbalah. You're not really going to ever understand how Hashem can have all these distinct parts, but at the same time, all of these parts are part of his oneness. That's kind of like it's a secret for the Kabbalists. But then we come to today, which is chapter 10 of 12, and we start speaking specifically about the Middot and the Sefirot of Hashem. And what the Tanya is going to do is it's going to bring an analogy that we've spoken about before. We spoke about it in chapter 3, where we say, there's a sun, and then there are the rays of the sun. And just like if there was an aspect of that ray that comes into the center of the sun, that ray will get sort of subsumed in the main body of the sun, and it's not really going to have an independent existence anymore. But at the same time, what comes out of the sun is light. And light is, in a way, the way that sun manifests outwards. So you have the light and you have the body of the sun itself. And these are two different aspects. The light only has an identity in as far as it's outside of the sun. But when that ray of light, so to speak, is in the sun, it gets disappeared in the greater context of the sun. So is that Shoshana that's joined us? I hope so, because I think that looks...
Hi, Brooke. I'm here.
Okay. So...
Run to the ladies' room. I'm sorry.
That's okay. So when we come to this week's chapter, which we haven't started, we're just going to start in a few minutes. It's going to be talking about how Hashem can be separate. How can we say that Hashem is kind, or Hashem is acting with Gevura, or Hashem is this way, or Hashem is that way? Because how can you take an aspect of him and say he's only this when he's everything? It's kind of like a tricky thing to say Hashem is this or Hashem is that, because Hashem is always a composite of everything. So then the Tanya is going to say, that we're allowed to talk about Hashem in that way, because when we talk about Hashem in that way, it gives us a language to understand Hashem, because like a person can be kind and a person can sort of have a strong arm or speaks with their lips or sees with their eyes, or all of these anthropomorphisms. We allowed to do that because it helps us understand aspects of Hashem's reality, because we make it palatable and comprehensible to us on our level. But really, we have to know that Hashem is an all-encompassing oneness all the time. And I'll just say another couple words before we go into the text. But when we think of ourselves or the people we know, we like to be simplistic and say, this person is so X, Y, or Z, or their behavior was so, they behaved aggressively in this moment, or that person's a kind person, or things are black and things are white. And in actual fact, as we've already spoken about before, part of this evolution of consciousness, as I've spoken, is this ability to hold paradox. And that sometimes you can't just say something is X or Y. It's actually simultaneously both X and Y. And when it comes to Hashem's Middot, we're going to see that now when we go into chapter 10. When it comes to Hashem's Middot, on the first day, Hashem created light. I'll just say this outside, but we'll see it inside. On the first day when Hashem created light, and he said, let there be light, that's the ultimate kindness of Hashem. He's expanding, he's spreading, he's being beneficent. It's beautiful. But if there was no containment to that light, and there was no end to that light, then it wouldn't be light of our world, because our world is a world of time and space. So even in the let there be light, there's Gevurah, which is, let there be light is like the ultimate chesed, but it's incorporating Gevurah. And the second day of creation, when Hashem said, let the waters separate, the waters of the firmament separate, that was an act of Gevurah, because you tell two of your children, you go to that corner and you go to that corner. I'm separating you. It's time out. That's an act of Gevurah. It's asserting boundaries. The lower waters go down, the upper waters go up. That's Gevurah. But it's actually chesed also, because when Hashem separated the waters, there was the revelation of land that human beings could live on. So it looks like it's Gevurah, but it's really incorporating chesed. So this is what chapter 10 is all about. It's looking at Hashem's wholeness and understanding that he is all aspects all the time, but for our own limited sort of humanistic need to relate to him and put his actions in human terms, we sort of attribute different things to him and talk about particular Sefirot and particular ways of being, but that's really sort of for us, and it's not how it is for him. He is all things all the time. Okay, so now we're going to go inside into chapter 10, and I will share, and I see Meryl's joining us, so that's so nice. Welcome, Meryl. I'm so happy to see that you've joined the class. Long time no see. But anyway, here we are. So we're going into chapter 10. Oh, yeah, very nice to see you. Very nice to see you. Yeah, there you are. Okay, so we're going into chapter 10 of Shaar, Yichud, Emunah, and here we are coming in. Okay. Ach mikol makom. But in any event, we're talking about the Sefirot and our ability to understand them. And in the English, it says here, they transcend intellect and comprehension. We can't understand this reality of Hashem and his Sefirot and all of this oneness. Since the Torah speaks as in the language of man, ho'il. V'dibra Torah balashon b'nei Adam. The Torah is speaking in the lashon, the language of b'nei Adam. Shachach et ha'ozen ma shehi yechula lishmoa. This language is enabled for our ear and in what we can hear and what we can comprehend. And then it says, Lekach nitan rishut lechachmei ha'emet ledaber bisfirot baderech mashal. So it says actually, permission was given to the Kabbalists, literally the scholars of truth, to speak allegorically about the Sefirot. So I've already spoken about this. We use a mashal. We say Hashem has this attribute, that attribute, but it's really just for the sake of our comprehension. So then we're going to carry on. V'karu ota orot. So now we're going to use a mashal that the Tanya is using, and it used it before, and we're going to talk about the fact that we're going to talk about light, that in a way we're going to compare Hashem to light and compare his influence into the world like a sun shining its light outwards. And it says, Kadeh, she'al yedei hamashal hazeh, through this allegory, Yuvan lanu kitzat inyan ha-yichud shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu midotav. And through this metaphor of light, we're going to be able to understand just a little bit about Hashem's Middot and his Sefirot and his different sort of personas or attributes, what we call Middot. And really, it's his Middot. They what we call the Sefirot, they're our Middot, but obviously our Middot are just a reflection of his Middot. When we say our Chesed, our Gevurah, it's really because everything is rooted into Hashem. He's the source of everything, and these are his Middot, which we're trying to separate out of his oneness. So it's a paradoxical process. Shehu b'derech mashal, that through this allegory, ka'ein yichud or hashemesh shebetoch guf kadur hashemesh im guf hashemesh shenikra ma'or. So by way of illustration, like the unity of the sunlight that is within the actual sun itself, with the solar globe itself, which is called not only sun, but also luminary as much as it emits light. So can you talk about the sunlight while it's in the middle of the sun? Can you do that? Or does it the sunlight gets lost when it's in the actual sun itself? So it says, Kamo shekatuv, like it says, et ha'ma'or hagadol v'gomer, that Hashem created the greater luminary. Hashem, so it's written here, the English translation is that God created the greater luminary. In other words, God created the very source of light. And then it says, the ray and the beam which spreads forth and shines from it is called light. As it says, and Hashem called the light day. V'hazir v'hanitzion ha'mitpashet u'ma'ir mimenu nikra or, kamo shekatuv v'yikra Elokim la'or yom. So there's something about this light, and we know that this is really a spiritual light, because we're talking about something that happened on day one, right? Mm-hmm. And we know that the sun and the moon were only created days later. They weren't created in the very beginning. So this light that we're talking about is really what we were talking about in Hanukkah, the Or HaGanuz, the spiritual light that was an emanation of Hashem himself. So that's what we're talking about when we say light. We're not really meaning daylight. We're meaning the light of, I guess, understanding, the light of consciousness and also the opposite of darkness. So it's an interesting to try and really understand what this light was. Ukasher ha'or hu mimkoro b'guf hashemesh, but when this light is in the source of the sun itself, hu mi yichud imo b'tachlit hayichud. It's hard to talk of this light when it's inside the orb of the sun. It seems to have no independent reality, so to speak. It's in absolute unity with the orb itself. Ki ein sham rak etzem echad shehu guf ha'ma'or ha'ma'ir. At that point, there's only one unity, namely the body of the luminary, which is emitting light. I hope this is clear. Is this clear that there's the sun and there's if we're talking about anything that's coming out of the sun, when it's in the sun itself, it's sort of disappearing. It has no independent existence. Is that clear? That part is clear. And then when it comes out of the sun, that's when it's shining, if you imagine rays of light shining as little independent, seemingly leaving the mothership and going off into the world to shine into the world, then there's an apparent sense of separation or sense of independent existence. Okay. Inside the sun, the ray and the light, it's absolutely one being with the body of the luminary, which illuminates, has no existence by itself at all. And then it says, and this, the same way, just like that ray of light, when it's inside the sun, it doesn't have its own independent existence or its own independent personality or its own independent identity. In the same way, the kadavarim ha'ele mamash v'yoter mizeh hein midotav shel hakadosh baruch hu. Same thing with all of Hashem's midot. When they're inside the source of all of everything, there's no way that these things are not completely identified with him, with his, and then his ratzon and his chokhmah and everything, all of this, his will and his wisdom in the world of Atzilus, his essence and his being, everything is united in a perfect unity. It's all one. No separating. So Hashem and his midot are all one. And they derived and they emanate from him, just as by way of analogy, light is diffused from the sun. But then it's saying, but the analogy is not perfect. It's pretty good, but it's not perfect. Because it says, Hashem's unity and his attributes is not exactly like this, like the fusion of the sun with the light, but in a manner which is remote and concealed from my comprehension. The way it's not exactly like the analogy, it's telling us again, it's a secret of Kabbalah, it's concealed from us, we can't really understand it. Nevertheless, and this is kind of funny because the people who are explaining the Tanya, they say that the Alter Rebbe says, we can't understand it. It's difficult to get how he can have these different midot, and these different midot are part of his oneness, but they have like their own sort of separate personas, so to speak. We can't understand it, but at the same time, we got to try and understand it. We have to try. We can still make an effort to try and understand it, although it's very complicated. So it says, nevertheless, we go umukol makom l'shakach ha'ozen. We're going to still try and like speak a language that our ears can grapple with and our ears can try to get. And then what are we going to try to understand? And it's still talking about the sun and the rays. I'll read it in English. We can perceive and comprehend that just as in the analogy, the light of the sun which is united and nullified in its source, has no name of its own, only the name of the source. So too, Kach kol midotav shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu v'ratzono v'chachmato eino olat v'nikraot b'shemot elu klal. When it comes to Hashem, his will and his wisdom are not designated and called by these names at all for him. For him, it's just him. We only have names like Hashem's wisdom, Hashem's will, Hashem's ratzon, his desire. That's only for us. For him, he's a oneness. For us, we try and relate to these different aspects of him. Okay.
The light that you're talking about, is it the sun that we know today, or is it the light that was from creation, that, the light that got darker after Adam and Chava sinned? Is that the...
So I think that when it starts talking about this light, it's talking about a spiritual light, and it's talking about a light of creation. It's a light, it's different. It's not the light from the sun, because the sun is the analogy, but the sun was only created on the third day, and this is happening on the first day. So it's a different kind of light. Okay. But it's saying that anything that comes, any aspects of Hashem that are seeming to separate out from him are only from our perspective.
You're just using the sun as an analogy, as a visual.
Right, exactly. So it says, Elu legabe hanivraim le'elyonim v'tachtonim. And all of these aspects of Hashem, his will, his wisdom, etc., they are separate aspects in terms of us, but not in terms of him. In terms of him, there's just a oneness. And then it says, in the lower worlds, below the world of Atzilot, in the world of Bria, Yetzirah, and Asiya, for anything that's lower than the world of Atzia, for any created being, a higher being or a lower being, anything that exists outside of that highest world of Atzilot, and I'll explain this in a minute, anything in the lower world is going to be relating to an aspect of Hashem that is starting to separate out from that initial unity. So I don't know if we're all familiar, but let's just qualify these terms: the world of Atzilut, the world of Bria, the world of Yetzirah, and the world of Asiya. So let's just imagine that there's a ladder, or for simplicity's sake right now, let's just say there's a building, and the building has 4 levels. And there's the top level, which is the roof of the building. That's the world of Atzilut. On that roof of the building, actually, I don't think the building's a good analogy. Let's just think of 4 worlds. And the highest world is the world of Atzilus. Everything is one with God. There's no separation. But then when we come down to the next world, the world of Bria, creation, Yetzirah, formation, and then Asiya, action, there's more and more differentiation from that oneness into separate things. It starts as an energy, and then it becomes more dense, let's say, until it's the most dense down here in our world, which is the world of action and the world of actual things walking around in 3D. But in the higher worlds, there's energetic resonance of the world of creation, the world of actuality. Is that completely unclear? Should I say it again, or are you familiar with these terms, or should I try and explain it again?
I'm a little familiar with it, but it's still esoteric.
Yeah.
You know what? I'll go from the bottom and then I'll go higher. Instead of coming from higher and going lower, I'll go from lower and to higher. Let's say we live in the world of action, okay? In our world of action, I'm picking up my watch, I have a book, I'm a 3D object, I'm flesh and blood, and I move. I have action and nothing happens. If I want to drink water, I pick up the cup and I drink it. That's the world of action. The world above me, the world of Yetzirah is, let's say it's the world where my emotions are playing, or the energy of my actions. You can't see a person and a book and a pen and a paper, but you see the effects of all those things in energy. It's a higher world. Do you understand what I'm saying? Because I'm going more into a world that is less physical, and I'm going more into worlds that are more spiritual, more ethereal, more less dense. And then above the world of Bria, there's Yetzirah, there's the world of Bria. In the world of Bria, things are just that they even more amorphous than they were in the world below, but they're taking shape. Maybe that's an intention. Maybe that's, and then in the world of Atzilus, everything is just God. Okay. I don't think I'm going to do more on that right now. I'm going to carry on. But that is a fundamental principle in Hasidus and in Kabbalistic thinking and everything, that we simultaneously existing on multiple levels. If I take it out of the Kabbalistic and I take it out of the Tanya, and I just talk about ourself, right? Let's say I'm going to buy, let's say a man buys his girlfriend a bouquet of flowers. But in the world above that, there's his love for his girlfriend and his wish to give her something that will make her happy. And in the world above that is just the desire for him to have a connection and a relationship. And in the world above that, there's no such thing as man and woman and girlfriend and boyfriend. They just united, or husband and wife. There's no independent existence. Everything is just a one. So then you come down and there's like an amorphous feeling, and then you come down again and there's an intention and a wish and a desire, and then you come down fully and it manifests that this man actually buying this woman a bouquet of flowers. But before that action, there was all these things that preceded it, more and more, less and less physical and more emotional, spiritual, energetic, that preceded the action. Can you appreciate that analogy? So that's how it is in the world, that it comes down and it looks physical on the lowest level, but preceding those physical actions are emotions and energies and things that are connected to the action, but much less graphic or much less dense. Okay. So let's carry on. So in relation to the lower worlds, below the world of Atzilus, in other words, in the worlds of Bria, Yetzirah, and Asiyah, things are brought into existence and given life and are guided by the Holy One, blessed be He. And how are they guided? They're guided through His will, His wisdom, His understanding, His knowledge, which garb themselves in His holy emotive attributes. So, and how did they garb these things? In Chesed, Gevurah, and Tiferet. In other words, how is Hashem interacting with the world? He's interacting with the world through his chesed, through his gevurah, and through his tiferet. And I'm going to show you now that Tanya is going to come with a very specific example of how Hashem is relating to the world through his Middot. Okay, so let's hear. Kedeita ba-midrash, like it says in the Midrash, Ba'asara devarim nivra ha'olam, that Hashem created the world with 10 things or 10 utterances. Devarim means utterances. Nivra ha'olam, Hashem, 10 devarim can actually be things or utterances, because devarim are things and they're also words. So it says that Hashem created the world. It says in the Midrash, Ba'asara devarim nivra ha'olam, with 10 things Hashem created the world. B'chochma, b'tevuna, ubeda'at, v'chome. What did he create? Which were the 10 things he used to create the world? It says here, with his wisdom, chochma, b'tevuna, with his understanding, ubeda'at, and his knowledge, v'chule. And we can guess it's going to say all the 10 Middot.
What's the last
10
one?
Sefirot.
What's the last one?
The last one was da'at.
No, after that.
Well, b'chochma ubetavuna, I guess is bina, really, ukadat and da'at, v'chule, etc.
Oh, I thought there was a fourth. Okay.
Yeah, etc. Dichtiv, like it is written, Hashem b'chochma Yasad Eretz, that Hashem founded the earth with wisdom. Konein shamayim v'tevuna v'da'ato tehumot nivka'u v'gome. Hashem founded the earth with wisdom. He established the heavens with understanding, and with his knowledge, the depth of the abyss were burst open. So it's trying to show that creation is rooted in his Middot, in these different aspects of his wisdom, understanding, knowledge, etc.
Earth, heaven is the third, the sea? What's the depth?
Well, it says Hashem founded the earth with wisdom. He established the heavens with, I guess, bina. And with das, the depth of the abyss were burst open.
I don't know what that is.
Right.
I figure you have earth, you have heaven. That sea has got to be the
abyss, even the openness,
below the ground.
Right, the stuff that we don't. Yeah, that.
I don't really know. Let me just see. Let me see. Let me just see here. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, well, let's just see here. Okay, as the verse states, Hashem through wisdom founded earth. He set heavens firm through discernment, tevuna, which is connected to bina. Through his knowledge to us, the depths burst open. So if we want to look it up, it's a verse from Mishlei, from Proverbs. You want me to look it up quickly? It's a verse from Mishlei. So let me look it up. Just 1 second, and I'll tell you the source here, what it is. It's an aspect of creation. 3:19. So let's do 3:19. Wow. So by wisdom, the Lord laid the earth's foundations. By understanding, he set the heavens in place. So it's just saying that Hashem created the world with his wisdom, his bina, his da'as, etc. And then here's another quote. Ukama Amar Eliyahu. This is what Eliyahu says. Da'apikat asa tikkunei, in Patach Eliyahu, that's part of the Tikkunei Zohar. And what does he say? V'karinan lahon asa Sephiron. You have brought forth 10 tikkunim, 10 garments, and we call them 10 Sefirot. And then it continues, through which to direct hidden worlds unrevealed and worlds revealed. So through these different tikkun garments or Sefirot that Hashem is revealing of himself, he's directing hidden worlds and revealed worlds. And through them, he conceals himself. He conceals himself from the created beings so that we should not be able to perceive the divine life force that creates and vivifies us. So as I've always been saying for years and years, I've been saying that Hashem plays hide and seek with us. He creates the world and then he hides himself in it. And then he says, come find me. I'm hiding in the world and it's your job to come find me. And then there's this beautiful mashal, beautiful story from one of the Rebbes. I'm not sure, one of the Rebbes in Lubavitch. He was playing hide and seek with all his cousins and he hid away. And the kids didn't come find him. The game ended and he carried on hiding. And eventually, you know, he was hiding for a long time. And eventually he came out of his hiding place. Everybody had forgotten him. And he was crying and he was inconsolable. Actually, I don't know. I just exaggerated. He was crying. I don't know if he was inconsolable, but he was crying. And they said, why are you crying so badly? It's just a game. And he said, I'm crying because I feel like that's how Hashem must feel. He hides and he's waiting for us to come find him. And then when we don't find him, that's how sad he must feel. That's this little child that grew up to be one of the Rebbes in Chabad. So I thought that was a beautiful story. Okay, so he's hiding and he's concealing. And then it gives us some very nice examples. And this is what I was telling you. Al derech mashal, for example, by Yom Rishon, on the first day, Misheshet Yamei Bereshit, of the 6 days of creation, Niglet Midat Chesed. Hashem revealed his quality of chesed, of kindness. Klula Mikol Midotav Hakdushato V'ratzono V'chachmato Uvinato V'da'ato Miluvushin Ba. Now, this is an interesting thing. He's saying that he revealed his chesed, but all of the other midot were included in that action. In other words, if we think about any cell in the body, any DNA cell, any part of any hologram, what is the thing about a hologram? Every part contains the whole. So even though it's saying that Hashem on the first day revealed his midah of chesed, it's also saying that together with that chesed that he manifested on the first day of creation, really all of his midot were involved, but somehow chesed was like shining the brightest, but all the other midot were also part of, because Hashem is always a oneness. You can't separate him from his other attributes because he is everything. He can't be something without others. So even though we say he created the first day with chesed, it was all of his midot as well. So that's kind of interesting. Uvarava et haor, and with all of this, but with sort of chesed leading the way, b'ma'amar yahi or, he says, let there be light. Shehi b'chinat hit pashtut v'ham shachat haor le'olam milamayla v'hit pashtut ba'olam misof ha'olam ad sofo shehi b'chinat midat chesed. So he diffuses this flow of light into the world from above, and its diffusion in the world from one end to the other. This creation of light is an expression of kindness, because why? He's diffusing his light into the world. Of course, that's the essence of his kindness and the essence of his wanting to reveal himself. So we could say Hashem was showing his chesed. Isn't that nice? But right away it says, Rak mipnei sheklulam gam b'midat gevura. But he also is including his gevura. Why? Because that light had to have some containment in some way. Therefore, the light, and it's saying that this light, once it comes into our world, has to be more limited than it is in its source. In its source, it's unlimited, but when it comes down to our world, it has to be a little bit limited. So the light was not as spiritual as the actual supernal light. And then it says why? Because it becomes enclosed in this world, which by definition is finite and limited. And what do they give as an example that this world is limited? It says it's a journey of 500 years from earth to heaven and from east to west. So that's a kind of an interesting proof that our world is limited. But basically what they're saying, it's from the Talmud, that we have a world of time and space. So if it's going to be a light from Hashem's world, which is infinite, and that light is going to fit into our world of boundaries, it has to constrict a little bit. And that constriction is the Gevura hidden in the Chesed. Everybody with me? Or not hidden in, but together with. They kind of behaving in tandem. There's the beneficence of the Chesed, but then there's the awareness that this is a finite world and there needs to be some Gevura as well. And then it says, and the same thing when it comes to the second day. V'chein bayom sheni, and in the second day, niglat midat gevura. We have the revelation of the mid of gevura. Kalula mishar midot rotzono v'chule. And also all the other ones that kind of come along, because when God travels, he travels with his whole self. He doesn't leave any part of himself behind because he's a everythingness. So there are all these other attributes, but somehow Gevura is the most articulated in a certain way. Uvarava harakia, and through the Gevura, he created this rakia, this firmament, right? The separation of the waters. But ma'amar, with the saying, Yahi rakia b'toch hamayim. Let there be a firmament in the midst of the water. V'yahi mavdil bein mayim lamayim. And there was a separation between the waters below and the waters above. And like I said when I was giving you the summary, Shahi b'chinat simsum ugevura. This is Hashem showing contraction and gevura. Laha'alim mayim ha'elyonim ha'ruchanim mamayim ha'tachtonim. He's showing his gevura by separating the upper waters and the lower waters. He's doing this with his gevura, and because of this, the higher waters remain in the sort of spiritual realm, and the lower waters become more physical. Va'al yedei zeh nitzgashmu hatachtonim behivdala me'ha'elyonim. So there's a separation of the lower waters are more physical and the higher waters are more spiritual. But then, lo and behold, when we talk about the ultimate aspect of Hashem being Gevuradik, in that Gevura, umidat chesed, is also chesed. Kalula ba ki olam chesed yibaneh, because really everything Hashem does, the very act of creating the world and even giving us a place where we can hang out, so to speak, is part of his chesed. And he built the whole world with kindness. Even the things that he did that required his gevura, still it's sourced in kindness. And then it says, Shehakol kadei sheta ra'eh b'yabasha va'adam aleha la'avod Hashem. The whole reason why he had to separate the waters was so he could reveal land. So mankind, because we're not fish, we're not amphibians, we're not dolphins, we need dry land to live. So if it was all water, which was hovering over the face of the universe, of the world, we wouldn't have a place to be. So he had to make dry land, and it took his gevurah to separate the waters and make the dry land, but that was showing his kindness. So we had a place where we could exist. And why did we need a place to exist? So we could serve Hashem. So, and then it says, and so on with all of the days, which each of the other days of creation, we could say the third day was Tiferet, and the fourth day was Netzach, and the fifth day was Hod, and the sixth day was Yesod, and the seventh day was Malchus, but they all are inter-inclusionary, right? That's the phrase. They all include the other ones, but one is dominant, but all the other ones are part of. And we're almost at the end, so just stick with me a little bit more. And so it is this thought that Eliyahu expressed in the Tikkunim when he said the purpose of the emanation of the Sefirot was to show how the world is conducted with righteousness and justice. Righteousness is law, the Gevurah, but justice is Rachamim. Everything has this Gevurah and Rachamim. Everything has kind of this incredible balance of all these different Middot, but it is not that you have a knowable righteousness, which is law, nor a knowable justice, which is mercy, nor any of these attributes at all. Any of these things that we're saying, Hashem's kindness, Hashem's Gevurah, Hashem's Chochmah, Hashem's Tiferet, whatever we say about all of them, we don't really understand them. They're a little bit above our comprehension, but we're using our capacity to understand. We're using language that our ear can discern. We're using analogies and language that we can relate to based on our own experience. And we know that we have kindness, we have Gevurah, we have Chesed, we have all these things. And that helps us to understand Hashem, who's the root of all these things. But we have to appreciate that there is a limit of how much of his level of these things we can really understand, and understand that we're using words to try and describe him, but those words are just our feeble attempt to understand reality and his reality. That's kind of, as far as I understand it, that's what I think.
It's a lot.
Yeah, so that is chapter 10. That is chapter
Got through the
10.
whole chapter?
Wow.
That is the whole chapter of, that's the chapter 10 of Shaar, Yichud, Emunah. And basically it's talking about creation, Hashem's Middot, how it's, for our understanding, we separate and give them these terms, but that he's a composite isness, he's always everything. But in our world, he's disguised and contracted in some way for the world to exist as a reality, and for us to exist as a reality. If he wasn't contracted and concealed, then, as we've spoken before, we wouldn't be able to have the illusion of our separateness and the illusion. But can you imagine when all those illusions disappear, the illusions of our separateness, the illusions of that we independent beings, we will wake up and we'll realize that we are godliness and everything around us is godliness. And that's what's happening now. That's why we're in the era of the revelation of Mashiach, because more and more people, from the beginning of quantum physics, from the realization that we energy, from the realization that everything is energy, from the scientific discovery that in a person's cells, if you go down to the smallest particle of the cell, you're going to come to the fact that there's an empty space and that we basically empty space. That the reality of us is that inside every cell, the most dominating fact about the cell is empty space. How is that? How do we wrap our head around that? Or the fact that we all made up of molecules, and a table is made up of molecules, and we made up of molecules, and basically the difference between us and, it's the science is becoming so amazing to explain to us what is reality. That reality is so much less graphic and dense and objectified than we used to think. It's so much more energetic, and it's so much more about less tangible things than we ever could have thought about. Even this class, we together, but we're not together in space. You where you are and I'm where I am, but we're together in intention, which is actually more powerful than space, because in terms of space, we separate, but in terms of communication and connection, we actually united. So our intention and our thought and our thinking is more powerful than the physicality, right? The physicality is you far away from me, but in the more energetic reality, we're doing something together and we're united. That's astounding. The internet is a way of bringing people together in an energetic, electrical way that makes spiritual teachings more and more understandable, how people can be united energetically or electrically, which is like comparing the world of Asiya to the higher worlds, which is energy and electricity and all kinds of things that are becoming more and more part of our awareness and our ability of relating to the world. So when Mashiach comes, our eyes will be opened and we'll see more and more truth of the fact that Ein Od Milvado. So it's exciting times.
Woohoo!
Wow.
That's Chassidus Monday night.
Yeah, I had some light conversation for the evening. It's intense from the beginning to the end.
Yeah, wow. I mean, that was.
Well, it's also difficult because we've sort of been repeating similar ideas, and each time there's like a subtle nuance to speak about it in a slightly different way. This idea of God and the creation being one. And how does that break down, and how can we make sense of that, and how do we understand it? And we don't have a complete understanding of what the Tanya is saying, but we're getting a gist.
Also, your excitement teaching it.
Yeah. Well, I'm very reassured by this egress that I got at the beginning of this process, where the Rebbe literally wrote, just give it your best shot. You don't have to get it down perfect. You don't have to, understand everything 100%, but do your best. And, if you have any questions, ask me. So I haven't had a good fortune of asking him a question or getting an answer, but I'm very encouraged by, the direction that the Igros suggested, which was to start with Shaar Yichud ve'Emunah and then to do Shaar Teshuvah. So when we finished Shaar Yichud ve'Emunah, then we'll do Shaar Teshuvah.
How many books are there of Tanya?
Shaar Teshuvah is also like a smaller one, a smaller piece. I'll tell you that in Shaar Teshuvah, it's also 12 lessons. And then Tanya itself is 52 lessons, because those were the chapters that the Alter Rebbe wrote that correspond to the days he was in jail. I don't think he wrote all of them in jail, but they have 50 chapters that sort of, they say, was, parallel to the days he was in jail.
Wow. That's wow.
Yes, so we'll see.
And this is the first Lubavitcher Rebbe who wrote.
Yes, this is the Alter Rebbe, the first.
Alter Rebbe, okay.
Yeah, Rabbi Shneir Zalman of Liadi. All right, so thank you for joining me. And if anybody was listening on the recording, please let me know. Send me a message, a like, so that I know people listen to the recordings. Thank you so much.
No
Okay.